I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them.
Continue our coverage this evening of the local state employee who was arrested and terminated from his position after several kilograms of suspected cocaine were seized. And I have a look at what happened in court today.
8 kilograms of cocaine were discovered inside the governor's own office, carried in by the very man appointed to represent the state's western region. This wasn't a cartel warehouse. This was the heart of public trust, transformed into a supply route. This wasn't an outside threat. This was betrayal wearing a government badge. If you want to understand how deep the rot runs, we go deeper. A child could read that message and understand what it meant. If you're the FBI director and you claim you don't know, it meant assassination. And it said it clearly. He's a dirty cop. At 5:12 a.m., the streets of Springfield, Massachusetts were silent. The hallways were empty. Then the Springfield State Office building was breached. DEA agents, backed by FBI tactical units, moved through the corridors like shadows cutting through stone. No screams. No warnings. Just steady footsteps and the cold weight of what they were about to uncover. A steel door shattered open, the sound echoing through the marble walls like thunder. Inside, framed photographs and folders lay scattered across desks, symbols of public trust. But trust had already been broken. On the center table sat a sealed courier box. When agents pried it open, the truth hit them like a knife to the chest. 8 kilograms of pure cocaine, a 9mm pistol, and an envelope with $3,500 in cash. Standing at that desk, hands in cuffs, was Lamar Cook, Deputy Director of the Governor's Office for Western Massachusetts. A man who once spoke of honesty, community, and service. Now exposed as the courier of corruption, caught red-handed with enough cocaine to poison entire cities. This was more than a drug bust. This was a collapse of integrity from within the system itself. When those sworn to protect begin to poison, the disease is internal. If you're still watching, you already know. This isn't just about drugs. It's about infiltration. After Cook's arrest inside the governor's office, the DEA's digital forensics team seized his laptop, encryption unlike anything used in government systems. The FBI's cyber unit worked for hours, and when the screen finally unlocked, the investigation exploded from one man to something far bigger. Dozens of encrypted files revealed shipping records, schedules, and coded notes. 14 months of shipments, each one hidden in plain sight. Fake Adderall pills, fentanyl sticks, methamphetamine crystals, all traced to Mexico. Just a fragment of over 500 pounds of drugs seized in the federal crackdown on the Sinaloa cartel. 19 total shipments, each weighing between 8 and 20 kilograms, all routed through the state postal system and dropped off inside government facilities. But the deeper the agents dug, the worse it became. The names weren't street dealers. They were public servants, patrolmen, deputy sheriffs, court clerks, even officers. People who took oaths to protect, now turned traffickers. Together, they formed a hidden chain, a quiet network built to move cocaine through schools, neighborhoods, and homes. Every shipment was timed during office hours, under state jurisdiction. Every package passed through a mailroom meant for government documents. This wasn't crime invading government. It was government feeding crime. The cocaine originated from a violent syndicate called La Nueva Sangre, a paramilitary drug faction spanning New York to Maine. A system rotten from within, where badges, titles, and authority were weaponized against the very people they were sworn to defend. Now the question isn't who, it's how far. And the next phase won't be quiet. It will be war. This is where the investigation ends, and the war begins. Tap like so the algorithm doesn't bury this story. At 3:50 a.m., inside a federal command post near Worcester, a digital map of Massachusetts glowed red. Each marker a location tied to the network. Storage units, safe houses, warehouses tucked between ordinary homes. At 4:03 a.m., a single message appeared on the secure network. Action, all units. Then the state lit up. Across 5 regions, FBI, DEA, and state tactical teams launched a synchronized strike. 14 targets, 14 minutes. No warning, no escape. In Lowell, armored vehicles rolled to a halt outside a 2-story auto shop. Agents stacked at the entrance, flashbang, impact. The steel door burst open. Inside, 3 men reached for weapons, but never got the chance. The room filled with blinding light and smoke as stun grenades detonated. Concrete walls trembled. Meanwhile, in Springfield, A warehouse fronting as an agricultural distributor hid its real inventory: 200 pounds of cocaine and 90 pounds of fentanyl, wrapped and ready for shipment. The silence didn't last. In Worcester, surveillance caught movement in a garage. Within seconds, suspects armed with rifles tried to flee through the back alley. Overhead, a Black Hawk helicopter cut through the sky. The voice over the loudspeaker boomed, "Drop your weapons, while you are surrounded." The suspects fired back. The alley erupted into chaos. Muzzle flashes lit up the night. Concrete shattered under gunfire. DEA and FBI agents advanced, calm, trained, and relentless. 9 minutes later, silence. 3 suspects down. 2 surrendered, shaking, realizing their empire was gone. By sunrise, the scale of the operation was undeniable. 47 arrests, 1-2 tons of narcotics seized from multiple sites, 129 firearms, including modified rifles and foreign imports, dozens of phones and ledgers filled with encrypted codes and digital payments. News helicopters circled overhead. Residents watched from windows in disbelief. And across Massachusetts, one truth was clear. This wasn't a single bust. This was an empire collapse. An empire that had operated beside schools, homes, and small businesses, hidden in plain sight. But now, for the first time, it was bleeding. And with every brick of cocaine logged, every phone unlocked, the agents knew this was only the beginning. The raids were the first blow, and the front door kicked open. But the real architecture of this network, the money trails, the corrupt offices, the names still hiding, was still buried deep. Inside the Boston Federal Analysis Center, walls of monitors flickered with the data collected overnight. Each screen revealing connections, transactions, and addresses, the veins of a living criminal organism spread across the state. The quiet part of this war was over. Now comes the reckoning. Agents, analysts, financial crime specialists, and cyber forensics teams worked shoulder to shoulder. Every file seized was cataloged, every hard drive cloned, every encrypted text decrypted, line by line. As the data unfolded, a pattern emerged. Not a map of streets, but a map of power. 4 main distribution corridors threaded through Massachusetts, each disguised behind legitimate logistics companies. Their trucks carried produce, hardware, and construction supplies, anything that made sealed containers appear ordinary. The cocaine Cook received was only a fraction of the network's reach. One endpoint in a massive pipeline stretching from the Mexican border, cutting through Ohio, moving into New York, and finally settling deep in Boston's commuter belt. Then came the revelation of the storage web. What looked like community food warehouses were, in truth, cold storage fronts. Behind neat rows of frozen vegetables sat brick-sized drug parcels, stamped with coded symbols to indicate purity level and destination. Next, investigators traced the financial arteries. Analysts uncovered 2 private casinos, small, exclusive, invitation-only establishments. No neon lights, no crowds. Just quiet back rooms where chips turned into cash, and cash became digital deposits routed through shell companies in Delaware and Puerto Rico. No alarms. No audits. Money flowed like it had every right to exist there. But the most disturbing discovery came from charitable organizations. A nonprofit claiming to support youth outreach had processed over $11. $3 million in donations. Every donor name was fabricated. Every dollar came from drug profits. That same nonprofit funneled money into speaking fees, campaign contributions, and security consulting retainers for several local officials. The network had built itself to look helpful to the community, helpful to the state, helpful to everyone, except the families burying their dead from overdoses. That was the heartbreak. The cartel didn't hide in the shadows. It wore the mask of everyday life. Your mechanic, your neighbor, your town fundraiser sponsor, your elected representative. That was how it survived, not through fear alone, but through trust quietly bought. When the final pins were placed on the investigative board, silence filled the room. The scale was undeniable. 14 targets, 14 minutes, $220 million in annual profit, thousands of households affected, institutions compromised from within. Yet within that chaos, something else appeared. Weak points, patterns, locations that depended on a handful of individuals still active. The empire was vast but fragile in key places. Those places could break. A decision was made. The next phase would not be surveillance. It would be purification. The shield had been stained, now it would be cleaned. The raids had exposed the network. The map had revealed its skeleton. But the hardest part was just beginning, because the cartel's greatest weapon wasn't the drugs it moved, it was the people it had taken with it. At dawn, unmarked federal vans rolled toward police precincts, municipal buildings, and administrative offices across Massachusetts. These weren't the fast, violent entries of the earlier raids. They were precise, surgical, inevitable. Inside a district station in Worcester, officers gathered for their morning briefing like any other day, until federal agents walked through the doors. Not with raised weapons, but with warrants. A lieutenant who'd served 23 years stared in disbelief as his badge and sidearm were taken. A detective once praised for reducing neighborhood drug crime lowered his head as his own handcuffs locked shut. A procurement official froze when agents opened a filing cabinet and lifted envelopes marked for community outreach that were anything but. 17 police officers, 2 municipal administrators, 1 state procurement advisor, all in custody before noon. There were no shouts, no excuses, just silence so heavy it bent the room. Some officers looked away, some looked down. Others watched with pain because deep down they'd sensed something was wrong but never believed the betrayal ran this deep. Outside, on the sidewalk, an elderly man stood holding a folded American flag, the same flag he once donated to the precinct after his son's funeral. He watched as officers were escorted out in cuffs. No shouting, no anger, just the hollow expression of a man realizing the uniform he trusted had betrayed him. Citizens gathered in quiet clusters. Some were furious, some heartbroken, most just stunned because the poison hadn't come from strangers. It came from the very people sworn to protect them. In Boston, the governor addressed the state. His voice didn't thunder. It was steady, controlled, like a man holding the weight of a cracked foundation. "If the badge is used to harm the people," he said, "then the shield is broken. And when the shield is broken, we repair it. We do not look away." In response, the Integrity Review Task Force was created, an independent bureau with full authority to audit police departments, government offices, financial transfers, and procurement chains connected to public agencies. Its mission was clear: restore trust where trust had been taken, rebuild institutions where institutions had been abused, protect communities where communities had been deceived. It would not be fast. It would not be simple, but it had begun. Cook's arrest once looked like a single scandal. Now it was recognized for what it truly was: a warning, a signal of how close darkness had come. And from that moment forward, Massachusetts refused to look away. The shield would stand again, clean, unbroken, guarded by those who refused to stay silent. When the last door shut, when the final ledger was logged, when the badges were sealed in evidence bags, Massachusetts entered a moment of quiet reckoning. Not victory, not relief, something heavier, something real. Because what happened here was never just about cocaine or cash or seized weapons. It was about trust, the trust between people and the institutions sworn to defend them. And that trust had been shattered from within. The warehouse raids, the office arrests, the firefights in alleys and loading docks each pointed to one chilling truth. The threat wasn't only outside our borders. It wore our uniforms. It sat in our offices. It shook our hands. But the same state that had been infiltrated also fought back. Not with denial, not with silence, but with relentless exposure and accountability. Badges were removed, offices cleaned, departments audited, names spoken aloud without fear of who they once were. And now the question that remains is the only one that matters. What do we do next? Because corruption doesn't die in a single raid. Cartels don't vanish in one operation. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight. This story isn't just about Massachusetts. It's about every city, every county, every department across America that believes it's immune until it isn't. So I ask you, not as viewers, but as people living under the same flag, do you believe this fight should continue? If you do, hit like so this story reaches the next person who needs to hear it. Comment below, shield or silence. Which side are you on? And if you want to follow the next chapter, subscribe and stay with us. Because the war for integrity isn't over. Massachusetts was only the beginning. The next state won't fall this quietly.